I didn't think they let the War Room Posse out after... You know, Charlie Kirk and Posobiec and Tyler and all the folks at Turning Point USA, very smart about intention, direction. Are we here to learn about or understand or compromise or accommodate the Great Reset? We are here to defeat it. I want to hear everybody now. Defeat the Great Reset. Defeat the Great Reset. Get up. Let's go. Defeat the Great Reset. Defeat the Great Reset. Here's how we're going to defeat it. Part one, we're going to build an army of the awakened. And you, because you're here today, are the cadre, the vanguard of that. Correct? Are you all in? Are you going to back down? Are you going to compromise? Every patriot grave, from the founding of this republic to what happened in Kabul, looks at us and demands of us that we defeat this. Any question in your mind about that? Amen. You're the backbone of this country. No, I'm just another Grundoon. I got the easiest job in the world. But let's give some history here. How do we get here? And how are we going to get out of here? And how are we going to defeat it? When I say defeat it, I mean take it apart brick by brick and burn it to the ground. I want to go back quickly because you have to understand the history, you have to understand the process, you have to understand the structure, the nomenclature, the players, right? Before we can fight and fight smart. So let's go back to, what is it, September 15th, around now, in 2008. They kicked in London that day, I think it was 15th or 16th of September of 2008. On that morning, I think the Gallup poll had John McCain and Sarah Palin, I think, up 1 point, margin of error. And what happened is they kicked Lehman Brothers into bankruptcy in London, right? The Lehman Brothers collapse. They weren't gonna bail it out. The smartest guys in the room, by the way, the party of Davos, Wall Street, the big corporations, the media, they forgot one thing: the commercial paper market. Remember? 3 or 4 days later, the country is on the verge of bankruptcy. How do we know that? Hank Paulson and Ben Bernanke go to the Oval Office on Thursday to George Bush and says, oh, by the way, we need $1 trillion of cash infusion, right, from the Treasury or from the Federal Reserve, pick it. If we don't do that, the American capital markets, the stock market, the bond market, will melt down in 48 hours, and the global stock market will melt down in 72 hours, and you will have anarchy and chaos. And Bush said, hey, we checked the Constitution, not my problem, you have to go see Nancy Pelosi. Remember that? Jim Cramer, the famous next day, Jimbo, buy the dip. He wasn't buying the dip that day. He literally said, if you need cash in the next, I think, 5 years, sell it all. And the market collapsed. Balance sheet of the Federal Reserve that morning was $880 billion. I think our total debt was $5.5 or $6 trillion. The fuse that was lit in that Oval Office went off on November 8th of 2016 with Donald Trump. After every financial collapse, you have a populist, essentially, uprising. And that's what Trump was, right? Trump was the first populist nationalist. He talked in a totally different vernacular. This was the substrate of the Trump revolution, the MAGA movement. Because the elites, the party of Davos and their American sector bailed themselves out. Did you guys get a bailout back in 2008, 2009? No, you did not. They added $4.5 trillion to the Federal Reserve, right? To bail out the wealthy, to bail out the big real estate holders, to bail out the stock market. And also they took interest rates to zero. Interest rates to zero, negative interest rates, zero interest rates, crush working class people, crush the middle class. Look at your savings account. No chance for capital formation at all, right? They bailed themselves out. But that was only the beginning. Today on the Federal Reserve's balance sheet, $9.5 trillion and $31 trillion of debt. 0.5% of the citizens of this country, let me repeat that, 0.5% own more assets than 90% of the country. Under Obama's the most progressive president in American history. Pardon my French, a real America's voice, bullshit, okay? He oversaw because he didn't understand it. He's a constitutional law professor. They got all the books. He didn't understand there's a fiscal and monetary policy. What they did is they bailed themselves out, right? They bailed themselves out and left the country where it is today. Remember, in this timeline, in 2016, when Trump starts getting some traction, what else happened in the summer of 2016? Brexit. Nigel Farage, right? The globalist, Nigel Farage. Brexit and Trump's victory a couple of months later are inextricably linked. It's the same type of people. It's the working class people up in the Midlands. A lot of these people were labor people. They wanted their country back. They wanted their sovereignty back. And that was the key to Trump. Yes, it's build the wall. It's stop China. It's all of that. But the core of it is that we're not going to take orders from our betters in the city of London, in Wall Street, in Davos, Switzerland, in Beijing, right? We're American citizens. After Trump wins on November 8th, and remember, it looked like they weren't even going to give it to us. Remember, the Detroit Free Press called it 9 o'clock at night that Hillary won. Those guys have been around since, I think, 1843, have never guessed it wrong. At midnight, they reversed and said, we go to neutral. And that's when I told candidate Trump that he was the president-elect of the United States, because we knew we had the math everywhere else. They didn't call it, right, until 2:30 in the morning, because they didn't want Trump on the stage in front of the American people, right? The nullification project started right away. Now we know with Crossfire Hurricane that might have something to do with Mar-a-Lago. We understand with Crossfire Hurricane that the administrative state and their rogue element, the deep state, right, started back in the summer when they started seeing Trump getting some traction. The nullification project started immediately to thwart every effort of Trump. Then we get to the third week of January 2017. Two speeches. One Davos and one in Washington, D.C. In Davos, President Xi makes a big deal. He comes, and the Financial Times of London and the Economist, all these guys are bowing down. He gives a speech, and he essentially talks about what is a new world order. That order is not a series of countries, but a series of networks and markets and systems, led by the Chinese. That would be the manufacturing superpower with, networks, one belt, one road, all of it, right? Built, that would organize the Eurasian landmass, including Europe. And this was a system. You're going to have markets and raw materials, and China will be the middle kingdom and make it. And man, they're clapping and applauding and high-fiving. This is something else. 2 days later, Trump gives American carnage, right? The only problem with that speech, I had a small hand in writing it. Just President Trump wrote it. Miller and I helped a little bit. Stephen. Was the podium was facing out to the crowd. He should have turned around and done it to the elites up on the frickin' stage, right? That was a reiteration of the Westphalian system. It basically said the nation state is what we're fighting for. It's the best unit we know for freedom of individuals. And we are never going to back off the sovereignty of this nation. Oh man, were they upset with that? Were they American carnage? Their heads were blowing up on fire already. But Xi's speech, The Economist, the Financial Times, man, I've never seen anything like it. They're kowtowing. There's the greatest thing. This guy's a genius, a new world leader, talking about this new system of markets and systems. Now let's think about that for a second. What is Davos, the World Economic Forum? When you're there, Davos, man, right? It is every law firm, every accounting firm, every consulting firm. You got McKinsey, Booz Allen, Wachtell Lipton, all the big law firms, big accounting firms, their consulting businesses, the Boston Consulting Group, every investment bank, right? Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, First Boston. You got every big commercial bank, every hedge fund, all the big private equity groups, all the venture capitalists, all the media, right? All the media is there, top media. It's an elite gathering. What, a couple thousand people? Super elite from all over the world. But they're all in one business. It's very good. But it's actually, I would actually say, they're in the information business. Now, the way they present it is they're in the information business. These are the insiders of the insiders, right? Are you telling me that those guys in private equity and the hedge funds and the venture capital and all the investment banks and all the media and all the superstars they had there in MSNBC and CNBC, Jim Cramer and all these guys, they didn't know about the Uyghurs? They didn't know about the evangelical Christians in China? They didn't know about the underground Catholic Church? They didn't know about Falun Gong? They didn't know about the oppression and slavery of Lao Beijing and the Chinese people? They absolutely knew all of it. And they don't care. If you want to see a rejection of the values of the Judeo-Christian West, you just have to look at that week. The affirmation by Donald J. Trump and the complete and total rejection by the party of Davos, the World Economic Forum. And that fundamentally is why they must be taken down and destroyed. There's no middle ground here. We cannot compromise. We cannot accommodate it. You see what they are right then. You know what? How can a civilization that's 10,000 years old, one of the great civilizations in mankind's history, was given us art and science and certain elements of mathematics, how can they be enslaved? You know why they're enslaved? Because the transnational criminal organization in Beijing, the Chinese Communist Party, has partners all over the world. And their annual gathering is in Davos. These people are not amoral. They're immoral. And they are not deserving of our support. Remember, in Davos, when we talk about globalization, we talk about Davos, we talk about this gathering and all the people, all the elites. You're betters, by the way. You're betters. Look at this economy today. You're betters, right? Because you're domestic terrorist, right? You're unruly. You go to school boards and demand that kids be taught, not indoctrinated. You demand that we have sovereignty. You're not up in Martha's Vineyard crying big tears because 50 people show up. 4 million, 4 point. Why do you think Hispanics in the Rio Grande Valley, why do you think Hispanics in South Texas are going to vote for us in record numbers? Why did they shift to Donald Trump? Because they understand they're being destroyed by their betters in Martha's Vineyard in Nantucket. If you've never had contempt for people, see how they've handled that in Martha's Vineyard. It's revolting, right? They don't mind if it's happening in Del Rio, Texas. They don't mind if it's happening in Eagle Pass. As long as it has Hispanics and white working class, they could care less. That's why they're unworthy of our support, right? That's why they're unworthy of our support. They call you anti-democratic. They've built up the biggest anti-democratic apparatus ever, the Leviathan, the administrative state, right? Now, this is what when you talk about the Party of Davos throughout the world, it's three elements. And you're going to hear a lot of this tomorrow with some of the best thinkers and speakers in the world. It's three things. It's an administrative state function of government and non-government NGOs, entities, right? Kind of the executive. It's corporate state-controlled capitalism. Massive corporations that are basically oligarchies, right? Silicon Valley. They don't want competition. They don't want entrepreneurial finance. They don't want any competition. This is just at the Chinese Communist Party. Big state capitalism in partnership, what they call public-private partnerships with the administrative state. And the third part is the funding mechanism. They have Wall Street, the City of London, but most importantly, they have the central banks. They have the Federal Reserve. Did you vote? Did anybody here vote? Was there any discussion or debate about the Federal Reserve taking their balance sheet from under $1 billion, which, by the way, the first 100 years, to $9.5 trillion? Who owns the Federal Reserve? 24 prime brokers who, and I'm telling them right now, we're going to have a concept called reparations. We're going to go back and we can mark to market. They hit a computer button, and the prime brokers make fees off of just putting the money into the system. Oh no, oh no, oh no. That's all coming back. That's all coming back. We want reparations. And what about the reparations and repatriation? The middle class in this country has been destroyed. By the way, last quarter, biggest record quarter in history of decline in net worth, $6.1 trillion, right? Right now, 50% of the American people don't have $500 of cash in the bank. But I think the top 5% of earners can't go 90 days on their current structure of how they live without a paycheck. How many generations have your family been here? How hard a work have they done? How much service to the country? How many foreign battlefields have they served on and died? .5% of the citizens in this country own more than 90%. Do you understand if the revolutionary generation came back, they would go, what in the hell have you done? They go, we fought a revolution. We put it on the line. We'd have been hung as traitors to, quite frankly, break away from an empire that was just starting to be on a roll. Why did they do it? Because they didn't want what we have today. They had a landed aristocracy, right? A bunch of bumbling aristocrats. They go, we're not going to do that. We're not going to be part of the crown and, take 20% and give the crown to us. No, we're Americans. We're something new. Franklin knew it. Adams knew it. Jefferson knew it. And they put it on the line. If they came back here today, they would be discussing with all of us. They go, how in the hell do you have the New Jerusalem and you've allowed it to be run by oligarchs in Silicon Valley, oligarchs in Hollywood, oligarchs on Wall Street, and you have a uniparty administrative state, and you have some conservative party that's just as bad as the Tories, that's nothing but controlled opposition. You may hate the sound of the name Steve Bannon, but I'm asking you one question. How did we get here? How did this happen? Do you have any... Thank you. I want to introduce my agent. It didn't just happen, right? The people you put in office, the people that are supposed to know better, just looked the other way, and quite frankly, made out like bandits, right? But it can't go on. Those three elements are what is the Party of Davos: a massive administrative state whether that's in Brussels or whether it's in Beijing or whether it's in the United States of America, in conjunction with state capitalism, these big oligarchs that get bigger and bigger and less competitive. What, there's 3 or 4 media companies, all, a handful of big tech companies. You can see it across the board. And a funding mechanism. In this case, the Federal Reserve, that just continues to print money. You do understand we're hurtling towards a financial and economic crisis of incalculable destruction and disaster. Because all they're going to come back and do is that they're just going to print more money, right? They're just going to do more deficit spending. How did we get the $31 trillion? If you break it down, $8 trillion on the wars in Syria and Iraq and Afghanistan, $8 or $9 trillion, right? Another $14 or $15 trillion just on deficit spending. Which, by the way, the deficit is going to be about $1.5 trillion, $2 trillion a year because we spend $1 trillion on our military, right? And then the other $10 trillion is from the COVID relief. That doesn't even count really the $5 trillion orgy of spending we've seen off balance sheet with Biden and these radicals, right? So how do we get here? They say you go bankrupt slowly and then all at once. We're beyond bankrupt. The only thing that we can do is continue to print money because of the prime reserve currency. Remember, it's just if you see all the coaches with the queen and everything, they're sitting there and it's very elegant and it's pomp and circumstance. That ain't Britain today. That ain't Britain after the war. That's from a time when the pound was the prime reserve currency, right? They're still living off that capital, although they're not a particularly relevant nation on the world stage today. Why? Because the same problem. Once it goes off the prime reserve currency, we're like Argentina. We're exactly like Argentina. And what does this cost do? Let me just tell you how the world works for a second. If you take a map of the Eurasian landmass, right? Just think about that. All of Asia, China, and Europe, in the Middle East. That's called the world island, right? Everything else, if you really look at a globe, the Western Hemisphere is a small island off of that, this great landmass. Well, let's go around for a second. You go from Western Europe to the Persian Gulf in the Middle East, down around to the Straits of Malacca and the South China Sea and Taiwan, and then up to Korea and Japan. That is a combination of commercial relationships and trade deals, capital markets, and an American security guarantee. Right? This is why are we paying, and by the way, I consider myself a patriot. I served in the military for, 8 years. My daughter, Captain Bannon, is here somewhere. She went to West Point, where we but we go and serve. We're not career people, but we go and serve and do our time and then come back to civilian life. Think about it for a second. We spend more money than all the world combined times 2. For this. We can't continue on. Remember, here's the Greek tragedy part of this. And when you look at that, by the way, we're upside down on virtually every trade deal. This is what Trump tried to redo. We're upside down on every commercial relationship, right? In the capital markets, we're kind of funding their capital markets. You're taking your money and putting it overseas, particularly into China, right? And then you've got NATO, the Persian Gulf and the Middle East. We spent $9 trillion. The South China Sea and the Straits of Malacca, and then you got up on Korea. It's $1 trillion a year, roughly. $1 trillion. And your sons and daughters on foreign battlefields, right? That's the deplorables. Think of the Greek tragedy part of this. Your tax dollars, and more importantly, your pension fund. Your pension funds. You're the guys. Zuckerberg didn't have any money. These guys didn't have any money. Peter Thiel didn't have any cash at the start. Elon Musk was broke. He's over at the White House all the time. Can I get another bailout, right? Before he went to Shanghai, he didn't have any cash. It's all pension fund money. It's all your retirement. The manufacturing base of the country has been shipped overseas, right? All the high value added jobs have gone by Wall Street and the corporations with your money. Think about that for a second. That's the Greek tragedy part. The revolutionary generation would come back and go, you people are morons. You're morons. There's a French poet, a young, very devout Catholic French poet that died very early on in World War I, named, I think it's PG, I think it's pronounced. Am I close on that, PG? He had a saying, and he died very early in World War I. Sniper got him at Verdun. He had a saying that the most important thing is not to tell your friends what you see. The most important thing in your life is to see what you see, right? This is why you're the vanguard of the army of the awakened. If you talk about this to anybody else, they go, "Boy, I didn't know that. Boy, I didn't know that." If you listen to Bernie Sanders and all these guys in the populist left, it's all a pillow fight. They never really talk about anything important. They want to get a minimum wage, pay 15. I mean, it's all nonsense. It's all nonsense. It's the Trump movement, it's MAGA, that has had the stones to stand in back of a guy and make sure we try to turn this country around. Since we are the New Jerusalem and the Judeo-Christian West, right? We know man has fallen, right? That's not a news flash to us. And Donald Trump is a very imperfect instrument, okay? But he is an instrument of divine providence. I saw it. I saw it in 16. It was divine providence that got us there. Divine providence. Why? Because these demons and devils in places like Davos, in the city of London, and Wall Street, right? That's where our opposition is. This is spiritual warfare. We're fighting in practical means, right? A battlefield is going to be the ballot box and the precincts, because we're going to take what's been passed down to us from time immemorial, democracy, a republic, freedom, free men and women, that every battlefield that's anybody's ever died on has passed it down to us. You might as well spit on their grave if we're to accept the party at Davos, right? What would they, if they came back, what would they say to you right now if they looked at what's going on in the schools? If they looked at what's going on the southern border? If they looked at what's going on in the finances of this country? If they looked at the garbage and trash put up on media every day? What would they say to you? They would say, you got to stand and deliver, right? We don't have a choice. Every one of you got better things to do. You don't want to be here on a Friday night listening to some nutcase, right? No, I'm serious. Every one of you has an alternative. Donald Trump had an alternative. You think Donald Trump is in the stage of his life, he's buying golf courses to be in the Open Championship in England, buying the U.S. Open and playing the PGA. A lovely wife, a great family, a billionaire many times over, right? And a beloved guy from The Apprentice by everybody. He didn't need to do this. It's not about his ego. He's a patriot. He knew he had to do it because Donald Trump knew something to his core. Not in the room, not in the deal. Why do they hate Trump so much? Why do they hate him? It's not Trump quad Trump. He's the same Trump he was back then. It's because of you. They hate you. It's not that they dislike you. It's not that they want you gay. They hate you to your core. They hate what you stand for. They hate what you represent. And they hate and fear the fact that you can run them out of Washington, D.C., Wall Street, and Davos. Are we going to accommodate it? Are you going to bow down to it? Are you going to sit there and take it and, most importantly, pass it down when you go home tonight? Look at the kids and the grandkids. Are you going to enslave them by passing this down? Is that what we're going to do? No. We're going to stop it right here and right now. If they want to fight, we're going to give it to them. And I mean it, every aspect of it. Not just a sweeping win in November, because that's when the hard stuff starts. Do you think that when Trump won in 16, they said, what a lovely idea, Donald Trump, and you got Steve Bannon, and you got all these other kooks. Let's just toss you the keys and see what you do. No, they tried to stop it immediately with unconstitutional methods. Because they don't care about the Constitution. They're lawless. Look at what don't take it my word, look at the federal judge said today about and they put an emergency stay. They're scrambling because they know they're lawless. There's good news and bad news. I want you to look around. If you falter at all, if you back off at all, if you say it's just too hard and I can't do it anymore, I got to go play golf, or I just want to watch Netflix, or I just want to do something else. Because trust me, do you think Mike Lindell's the only guy that's going to get his phones taken in an FBI raid? Do you think the 75 patriots at the grand jury? No. They are lawless. They're lawless. And they're backed into a corner like the vermin and rats that they are. And they're going to use every method possible to come after you. They're going to debank you. They're going to deplatform you. They're going to shut you down on social media, right? IRS is coming. By the way, they're going to squeeze you. They're going to squeeze. Oh, no, that's only for the wealthy. These people are such hypocrites. The one thing they could do on the taxes, the one thing is to do carried interest, to get rid of it. Because remember, all your bettors have a different tax structure. You do understand this, right? Carried interest. Instead of paying ordinary income, they pay capital gains. It's a huge delta. Not you. Do you get to pay capital gains on your income? No, you do not. Right? Do you think those 87,000 IRS agents are to go to the Wall Street guys and do that? No. First of all, they have an army of accountants and lawyers. No. It's to destroy you. So how do we take this down? How do we stop the party deaths? First off, they're not as smart and tough. Look, they have the central banks. They have the funding apparatus. They have all the Wall Street firms. They have the uniparty. They have an administrative state. They have Silicon Valley. They have Hollywood, right? So they have all the corporations. They have all the social media. They have all the technology. They have all the content. They have all the money. And they have all the political power. Exactly. This army of the awakened is providential, right? We have you. And I will line up on the side of that football every day of the week because I know we can win, right? They're not tough enough. They don't have enough grit. They don't have the steely resolve. Look at what your forefathers and mothers have done. Look at this country, right? Look what was created. Look what was created, and we've allowed it to go away. And look at what is taught in public schools today. Look at what's in media every day. Look at what Wall Street's turned into, a casino. Look at these corporations, right? FedEx 60 days ago, the guy in FedEx said everything's fine, everything's great, it's all fantastic. Jim Cramer puts out they're going to have a record year, e-commerce. Boom. One of the biggest misses in history, but it's emblematic. They don't care. Sit right there and lie to you. Oh, oops, global recession, I didn't see that coming, right? That's what corporate America is today. Just a bunch of lackeys, right? We're lined up against all of that. But why do they fear you so much? Why? Because they understand the power of the American people. And we have 2/3 of the people on our side. When people get this information, MAGA is 2/3 of the nation. Why do you think they're calling domestic terrorists? Why is he giving the demonic speech? Why are they doing everything and say, oh my God, they just had this White House, thing on domestic terrorism. Why are they doing that? They fear you. They understand you're not defeatable. But divine providence works in mysterious ways, right? Right? Trump was providential. I was there. We were the gang that could not shoot straight, okay? We had the greatest candidate, and my God, we tried to put him in the right place. That was divine providence, right? The big steal is providential. It's providential. Because up until then, people kind of they're Democrats or liberals, and it's Rachel Maddow, she gets on my nerves, but, they're just, it's like my fathers and grandfathers, Democrats. I came from a Union Democrat family. No, the mask is off. What this is demonic, right? Just look at, see what you see. They're not shy about it. It's not some conspiracy. They're up in your face about it. They're up in your grill about it. Remember, I just want to go back that in the party of Davos, in that speech, she lays out Made in China 2025. You know, they're going to be by 2025, they're going to be the manufacturing superpower, the fourth industrial revolution, all that. And how are they going to do it? Advanced chip design, artificial intelligence, regenerative robotics, quantum computing, CRISPR gene editing, biotechnology, and nanotechnology, robotics, all of it, right? Those 5. Now, what are those 5? I said, wow, that's the top of their 10 they're going to do, the top 5. That's quite interesting. Why would they pick those to be the top 5 that are hurtling down? Those converge into what's called the singularity, right? Know what the singularity is? If you converge those technologies, artificial intelligence, robotics, AI, quantum computing, advanced chip design, and CRISPR gene editing, biotechnology, it converges on a point. And on this side of that point is something called Homo sapien. On the other side of that point is something that's Homo sapien plus or different, right? Biden, these guys have a conference. They have a conference the other day. You know, he signs an executive order. This is not executive order. They just kind of thought of the thing. You look at it, it's very detailed. And of course, the media is going, oh, it's a moonshot for cancer, and it's going to cure, you know, people that have spinal cord injuries and Down syndrome, and all these great things. It's going to be terrific and all that. And Joe Allen's going to give you details more, but down in the middle of it, it says, we consider the biology in the cell to be programmable as a silicon chip, right? Yeah. And they put $2 billion about it, and they have it. So I sit there and go, you know, everybody said, oh, the transhuman guys, the transhumanist guys keep talking about this, a bunch of wingnuts. It's right there in your face. It's also part of the Great Reset. Because remember, what they talk about, and the woman that runs it now, they talk about edited humans, enhanced humans, the merger of man and machine, and she talks about it, human 2.0. Human 2.0. Think about, have we had a debate on that? Have you noticed any congressional hearings on that? Has that been on MSNBC every night or Fox? Have you noticed? This is the most important thing in us as a species. They're running around talking about climate change and all this, you know, the things getting hot, warm, cold. They don't know, up, down. Some theoretical thing that half the mathematicians and physicists and biogeochemists say it's not happening. But that's their religion, right? And Sacramento now is the vax. But they're talking about a real effort that DARPA, and they've created all these new entities. They're hurtling down, and they're not hiding it. They're calling it something different, cancer moonshot. It's not. You live in the most, how do I say this, biggest inflection point in human history. You understand that, right? And your children and grandchildren and their children are going to live with what we do right now. Right? We don't have a choice. These people are so radical. Here's the reason, and it goes back to that speech she gave. They're beyond atheist, right? They're demonic. They don't have any sense of human beings. You know, this whole you're gonna you know, not own anything and all that about property rights. You're gonna talk about property rights tomorrow. Hey, they got property rights for themselves. Larry Fink's going to be owning all the apartments. You're going to be paying for it like some gerbil on a wheel, right? You can see they don't care. Phoenix, Metropolitan Phoenix, the real inflation rate here is 18%, right? And the rents are going up the fastest in the nation. Do you think they care? No, they don't care. You fall behind every day, right, because of runaway inflation. Plus, they're destroying your balance sheet, right? The only way they even jack up interest rates is because they absolutely have to now. They have to keep the scam going. But they still got the Federal Reserve. But here's the point. This is the biggest inflection point in human history. In the lived experience of half of this room, or maybe more, we're going to get to a point where you're going to have human 2.0, right? They're telling you that. They're funding that. This is not science fiction. This is fact. This is what they're working on. This is the underpinnings of what the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset's about. all of those converging forces in a totalitarian, they've taken the model of the Chinese Communist Party, right? An administrative state, correct? With a funding mechanism, a central bank, and these state-owned industries that have converged for ultimate authoritarian and, I think, totalitarian power, correct? And in that, they're going to, because they're all godless, they all want to live forever. Immortality, don't they talk about they're going to save kids and they're going to do, that's all crap. They want to be immortal, right? And they also say there's too many people, the carrying capacity of this planet, there's too many people, right? So we got to figure out how we're going to do here. You know, they're all over Tucker and the Great Replacement Theory and about the thing. Hey, the Great Replacement Theory is Homo sapiens. That's what they're trying to replace. They're going to have their deal and devil catch the hindmost. And people saying, well, hold it, I haven't heard about that. Of course you haven't heard about it. They don't want to talk about it. They're just going to do it. And they're going to call it the cancer moonshot. This is what we have to stop. Remember what Jesus said, Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, when he sent the apostles out, remember one time to go heal, and they came back and said, hey, man, they're saying you're from Beelzebub and all this stuff's going on. He says, don't worry what people call you. Don't worry about that. Do your work, right? And they talked about saying, he says, there's only one eternal sin, right? There's only one unforgivable sin. And this is coming from Christ himself. He said there's only one eternal sin. There's only one unforgivable sin. And I've read all the Christian apologists, and everybody gets twisted up in pretzels in this, right? But he's pretty straightforward. And they ask one eternal sin, one unforgivable sin, to blaspheme the Holy Spirit. What are we but vessels of the Holy Spirit? Made in the image and likeness of God himself, right? And the Holy Spirit is imbued in every one of us, right? Do you think that taking that biology and saying it's programmable like a silicon chip, and I can edit human beings, and I can enhance human beings, and I can merge man and machine, and I can create man 2.0? You think that's acceptable? If Jefferson and the smartest intellects from the revolutionary generation came back here and said, what in the hell is going on? Not only have you let the country become an oligarchy that has taken away the wealth and prosperity and future of every generation to come and send you out on foreign battlefields fighting other people's fights, right? You've also allowed these madmen to just kind of start creating this with no public discussion or public debate. Have you heard any public debate about this? Have you seen any hearings? So we have our work cut out for us. But here's the great news. It gets back to a concept called subsidiarity, where they can't beat us and can't really fight us is at the local level. We control that. That's huge leverage, and they know it. Why are they coming out all the time? Why are they so freaked out about the precinct strategy, about the school boards? Why are they freaked out about that? Why are they losing it? Because they can't control it. They can't control you. They understand if you get in front of a microphone at a school board, let it rip, right? And you're gonna vote them out. And they understand that Hispanics and African Americans are also very conservative when it comes to the family. And they're not going to have their little boys and little girls in this thing with all this crap on gender ideology that they're pushing. Have you ever seen how like it came out of nowhere? Have you noticed that? Is this America? That's my question. Well, hold it. It's still America, but it's gone off the rails. And the only way we pull it back is you. Look. I saw a calculation one time by some, there was like, I think 100 billion people have lived in the world, right? On Earth. Homo sapiens. Man 1.0. I need you to go home tonight, really, in your prayers or just in your thoughts to yourself before you go to sleep. And just answer the question to yourself, not to Steve Bannon or Donald Trump or Tucker Carlson or Charlie Kirk or anybody, to yourself, not to your spouse, to yourself, in your innermost voice. And ask yourself, why did divine providence put me here and now in this place? right? Because you're going to be judged for that. You're going to be weighed and measured for that. And every generation coming down the road is going to look back at this time and say, who stood up and who fought and who rolled over? Are you prepared to fight? I don't believe. Are you prepared to fight? Are we going to destroy this and defeat it, or are we just going to accommodate it? This is not only about making America great again. This is about making man great again. Are you prepared to have them in some lab that you're paying for, in some weapons lab, to have them do a man-machine merger? Are you prepared to have edited human beings? Are you prepared to let these vacs go and have enhanced human beings? Are you prepared to accept that? Okay. We got to fight. I'm telling you, you got to fight. You have to be all in, not part way in. And you have to bring more. This is an army of the awakened, and you are the cadre. You're the tip of the spear. Because of your time, it doesn't take money. You don't need to write a check. You know what you need to do? You need to put your whole being into this fight, everything. You've got to leave it all on the battlefield. Understand? Any questions about that? Thank you. Love you guys.